O tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. O tidings. O tidings of comfort and joy. O tidings of comfort and joy.
So welcome to our first podcast of this season of Advent, and I'm Howell Snook and I'm a priest at Yig Parish, and today I'm with another priest mate of mine called Joanne. Do you want to say hello, Joanne?
Hi everybody.
Thank you. And today on this podcast we'll be talking about the promises of God from the beginning.
How the world around us today tells the story of Christmas.
How hard it is to trust in our world today.
And we're going to look at something that says, it wasn't me that did it, it was him. That's not my line. I can't say that.
Wrong.
You said that. I can't do
All
it like
right,
you.
we'll do it. That's it.
O tidings of comfort and joy. O tidings of comfort and joy.
So as we said in our little introduction, today we're talking about the promise of God from the beginning. And in every carol service, what we do is we chart the promise of God sending Jesus all the way through the Old Testament and talk about the birth of Jesus itself. So in today's podcast, we'll be talking about Adam and Eve, and we've been talking about Abraham, some characters from the beginning of the Bible in Genesis. And Joanne's here as well. Do you want to say hello, Joanne? I know you said hello.
Hello everybody.
All right. So we'll be talking about the promises of God right from the very beginning, and hopefully as we go through this time of comfort and joy, thinking about these different promises of God in these dark times will give us some comfort and joy in the dark time of COVID and the dark time of December. That's the whole point, really. So do you think it's a pretty dark, miserable time, December, then, Joanne? Are you a December fan?
I like December when it's nice and bright and frosty. I'm not too keen on the snow, but I do like the bright frosts, the crisp frosts. I don't like November. It's too wet and windy and dark. But December, yeah, there's usually something to look forward to in December. It's a bit brighter.
Yeah, it's a bit more like, well, it's like that thing in Narnia, and it always winter but never Christmas, isn't it? There's always Christmas to look forward to. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
So do you want to take us through the story of Adam and Eve then, Joanne, from Genesis chapter 3? Have a think about that. What actually happens with the Adam and Eve story then, just to give people a bit of background?
Okay, so we come to chapter 3 in Genesis. It's when we see God walking in the garden with Adam and Eve. All things are lovely. But then we have the snake tempting Eve and Adam into eating from the tree of good and evil, and things go a little bit wrong. So God comes walking in the garden looking for Adam and Eve, and they've hidden from him. He can't find them. They explain what's happened. They confess what they've done, and eventually God throws them out of the garden, and life is no longer quite so rosy. It's very difficult for Adam and Eve and humankind after this point.
Yeah,
That's in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I always think Adam and Eve, Adam means man and Eve means woman, isn't it? So it's a symbolic story about every human being. And I only really appreciated this story more when I became a parent, especially when I had 2 kids. Because when God catches them eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what's the first thing they do?
Well, they deny it. It's like the kid who comes out of the fridge covered in chocolate and says, I haven't eaten the chocolate.
That's right. And then they blame each other, which always makes me laugh, don't they?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I always like the way that it's the bloke always sort of blames the woman as well. He goes, oh, it wasn't me, it was her, she did it.
Yeah.
And what we see with that is powerful people always blame people who are less powerful than them, sort of pass the blame on. Makes me think of one of the teachers from school, Di Owls, who made a big banner that said, Aberdare Boys Comprehensive School pupil motto, it wasn't me that done it, sir, it was him. and that's about it. Like, it's not
Yeah.
about historical people. It's about all of us. And the other wonderful thing about this story is that the people are naked. Adam and Eve are naked. And
Yeah.
what do they do when what do they do when they get found out when they eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil?
Well, they hide because they're ashamed, and then they make clothes out of fig leaves, as the story goes.
Yeah, I appreciated that a bit more when I had kids because kids don't know they're naked, do they? They sort of run around in the
No,
bath all the
yeah,
time because they're innocent.
absolutely. Yes.
And that's the essence of
Yeah,
the story is that we lose our innocence, don't we? And
we do.
we realize what the world's really like, and we know good and evil, and it's really hard and horrible for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a promise, isn't there, right at the beginning that's given to Eve, not to Adam, isn't there? Right at the beginning of the story.
At the beginning of the story, when where are we looking?
Oh, it's at the beginning. At the right. Sorry, not the beginning of the story. At
It's
the
not the
end of the
beginning.
story. No, it's not the beginning. See, I'm meant to know this stuff. 3 years in theological college, and I get it wrong. It's at the end of the story. There's a promise given.
The end of
to,
this bit.
The end of the story. There's a promise given to Eve. Do you remember? You remember that promise that's given, isn't it?
The promise given to Eve that where are we? Oh, I'm looking at the promise given to Adam. That doesn't help, does it? So the promise given to Eve that he will put enmity between Eve and the snake, and he will crush the snake's head, and Eve will strike. The snake will strike Eve's heel. Is that the bit you're looking at?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bit. Do you want to kind of decode that? Because that's one the first reading from our carol service. Do you want to try and decode that about how does Eve got anything to do with that?
So I think Eve is seen a little bit like Mary. So as you say, the statues of Mary we quite often see with her standing on the snake. So she has crushed a snake's head, and that's how she's depicted there.
Yeah, because God only works in cooperation with human beings most of the time. So God asks Mary whether she would like to have Jesus. She could have said no, but she says yes. And saying yes to God is what destroys evil, destroys the snake and crushes the snake.
Yes, powerful symbolism there.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose for us, our yes to God in conducting kindness and love in the world is the way in which we can, in the dark times of COVID, actually destroy evil. That's the challenge behind it. So God doesn't sort of kick out Adam and Eve out of the garden with nothing. Just as they're leaving, he gives them a promise as well that he will put everything right through working in cooperation with them or with their descendants, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think although this story can, you can see it ending quite badly with Adam and Eve, as you say, being kicked out. I think this whole story shows us that God really wants a fellowship with us. He doesn't kick us out and leave us with nothing. Just as he came looking for Adam and Eve in the garden, he comes looking for us. And I think that is really where the comfort and the joy comes into this story. It's why God became man incarnate in Jesus and came to save us, if you like. He wants to be in fellowship with us.
Yeah, it's that desire of God to. That's the thing, is that all the way through the Bible, right from the very beginning, God goes looking for us. So he goes looking for Adam and Eve right at the very beginning, even though they're hiding for him because they've done wrong. So that's what, and then blame each other. Because it wasn't me that done it, sir. It was him.
It was him. Yes.
It was my sister, or it was my sister that done it. It wasn't me. It makes me think about when I was a kid. I just learned to write my name, and I wrote Howell on the dinner table with a pen and scratched it in. And I said to my mother, "How did you know it was me?" And she says, "Your name." It wasn't me that done it. It was my sister. She wrote it. You know what I mean?
She wrote your name.
No, she definitely didn't go to bed, that sort of thing. I think that's the best way of understanding it, really. And one of the carols we're putting out this week is the Holly and the Ivy. Do you want to say
Yeah.
something about the Holly and the Ivy as a carol, Joanne, and why
Yeah,
you
I mean,
like it?
it's a very old carol, Holly and the Ivy. And I think as we look at it, you can see the symbolism here. So the holly you can see to represent Jesus, and the ivy represents Mary.
Hmm.
So we're looking at the holly that bears the berry as red as any blood. Takes us back to the crucifixion. Jesus shed his blood. Um, the holly bears a prickle as sharp as any thorn, the crown of thorns that Jesus wore. And the holly bears a bark as bitter as any gall. That is the life and the death that Jesus suffered. It was bitter, bitter. Um, but then the last verse, of all the trees that are in the wood, it's the holly that bears the crown. Jesus is our king. I just think that's incredible symbolism there. Life's not going to be easy. It wasn't easy for Jesus, but there's the promise there that actually in the end it will all turn right. It'll all be okay. Jesus will save us.
Yeah, and there's that thing with Jesus. There's a wonderful thing I read once about it's in the creed about Jesus suffers, and the point this guy made is that it's not just about the cross; it's about the whole of his life.
Yeah.
Jesus is born in a way which is pretty extreme, really. He's born in utter poverty. He's a refugee. He's he has people coming to see him, but he's homeless basically. He's born
Yeah.
at the bottom of society.
Yeah.
He's not in a palace. He's not. And that's what the Magi make the mistake. They go looking for him in the wrong place,
Look,
don't they?
they do. Yeah. Yeah.
But he's not there. He's somewhere else. And this idea that God is with us in all aspects of life, joys and sorrows, I find that really incredible, really. So you ask,
Yes.
how can God understand? Well, he's actually lived it.
Yeah. 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 He's been there before us. He walks with us now. Yeah.
Yes. So he's got that understanding in a personal way of someone who's actually experienced all these things that we experience in our lives. And it's
Yes.
dangerous.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is Jesus is born into extreme danger, isn't he? That's the thing. With a sort of psychotic king trying to kill him right from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing I do like about the holly and the ivy as well is the way it uses cues in our environment. So it rather than separating God off into a kind of religious sort of world for Sunday mornings, it's actually about ordinary everyday things and finding the story of Jesus in trees and nature.
In those things.
And I find that so if you go out for a walk in the nice sort of bright sunshine of December, you can if it happens,
not windy November.
windy November, you can well, we're using those for those reflective walks you put out, isn't it? Because you put out those things about,
exactly.
Where we use cues in the environment to help us to think about the story of Christmas and the story of Easter.
Yes.
So that's the holly and the ivy there,
Yeah. Well, I think also, this whole story to me says that, a lot of people think that because you're a Christian, your life is going to be easy. It should be easy and God will take everything away from you. But that actually doesn't happen necessarily. Nobody said being a Christian was going to be easy. Jesus's life was, is fraught with difficulties. It was so hard at times. And I think we all experience some kind of setbacks in our life, some sorts of suffering. But the good thing is that Jesus is there. He's always there walking beside us. He's been there. He's done it. He walks us through it alongside us. And that to me is part of the comfort of this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not that God understands intellectually. He understands physically. What it's like.
Yes.
Because he's felt fear. He's felt isolation, loneliness.
He's had the shame.
Yeah.
The pain. Yeah. It's all there, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Sometimes we only think about that on Good Friday, as if Good Friday, like with the crucifixion of Jesus, is an exception in his life. But most of his life was, you know, quite, very, very difficult.
Yes.
Think about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's the comfort that God does understand, and He seeks us to be with Him.
Yes.
That's the thing. So somebody said once that Christianity is not an anesthetic. It doesn't numb the pain away, but it gives us a way of bringing meaning to our suffering, which then gives greater comfort. And I think that's
that makes sense.
It's not a painkiller.
Mm.
It's not like, it doesn't work like that. We'd like it to.
Yes. Oh yes.
We'd like it to.
Yeah, we were so like that. Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, is that it doesn't work like that. So the next story we're thinking about is Abraham and Isaac. Do you want to give us a quick sort of remusé of Abraham and Isaac? This story's going out later on this week. This reading is.
So, Abraham, he is called by God to uproot himself and to go to where God's going to take him, to a promised land. So he up sticks and goes, and he has eventually a son with his wife Sarah in his old age, a son they call Isaac. And then God says, I am going to bless you, and you're going to have descendants as numerous as the stars in the skies, as many as the grains of sand on the beach, and your descendants will be blessed through you. But amazing promises that God makes to Abraham, and the blessings he receives, so that Abraham's life is the beginning of our story with God, if you like, almost. I think a little bit more so than Adam and Eve. I think, to me, Abraham is the beginning of the story of the rest of the world. Not just the Jewish people, but the rest of the world. Abraham brings through his descendants the promise of God through Jesus to the rest of the world. So that's where we are with this story.
Yeah, and the funny thing with it is that God in this reading asks Abraham to sacrifice his son. And
yes.
The weird thing with this, so he takes Isaac up the mountain to sacrifice him, and Isaac asks him, he says, but we don't have a lamb to sacrifice. And Abraham says to him, God will provide the lamb.
God will provide, yeah.
And the weird thing with it is that I often think with this is, when in life we don't always understand what's going on, and we just have to trust. And I think COVID is a particular time for that, where lots of things are happening. We haven't got a clue what's going on. Nobody understands it. But Abraham, even though he didn't understand why God had asked him to do this, he trusted him.
And he still did it.
And the weird thing with it is, if you think about the angst that Abraham must have had as he's asked to kill his own son and sacrifice his son, that must be awful.
Yeah. What would he have told Sarah?
and it sounds like a complete contradiction of God's promise as well, because God promises that he's going to bless the world through his son and through him. But if his son is dead, he can't do that.
How's he going to do it?
How is he going to do it? It's a bit wacky, really, but he still trusts in it. But luckily for Isaac, more for Abraham, really, that God stops him sacrificing him at the last minute and says, no, there's a ram caught in a thicket in the corner. Take the ram out and sacrifice that instead. And there's a wonderful window in my church I was a curate in, where it had Jesus' crucifixion at the top, and underneath it was a picture of Abraham and Isaac. And that's the thing, is that the lamb that God provides is his own son, is Jesus. So God turns the Abraham and Isaac story on its head, and it's actually what God does, is he blesses the world through the sacrifice of his own son. So that's the thing, I suppose. There's two things in it, is that the promise of Jesus is right at the beginning with Abraham, but also as well is that thing about not understanding what's going on and how God
Yes.
can possibly be working in this way because it's just
Yeah.
wrong. So I don't know if you felt a
Mm.
bit like confused by the whole COVID thing and everything else that's gone on this year.
Oh gosh, it's a lot of people have said to me, "Why has God done this? Why is He doing it?" It's really hard to see the purpose of it, to see what it's all about. And I guess it's not something God sent to us. But there are good things that come out of it, and a lot of those we will only see in hindsight, I think. But yeah, it's confusing, and we just have to keep hold of that trust that God's walking with us through this. He'll guide us through it, and somehow we'll come out the other end. Yeah.
So you think we're a bit like Abraham then, really, that we're walking up the mountain thinking, what on earth is going on? And we just have to kind of trust that God is with us. And
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's not just with COVID, it's with a lot of things, Why has God punished me? Why has He taken my loved one, before a time? It's it's something we just have to trust and ask those questions and just have to trust. And we're walking up that mountain a lot of the time. Yeah, we are.
and not knowing what's going on at all.
Yeah, not knowing what's going on, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing why. It's a big ask, I think, a lot of the time. It's a big ask.
Yeah. And I think, I suppose that's the essence of love, really, is that love is that great risk where we trust
Yeah.
in the other person, even though we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And love always makes us vulnerable.
That was the word I was thinking. Yes, it is. Love and trust needs you to be vulnerable. It does. That's a good word. Yeah.
And Jesus kind of knows all about that. Because he had to love, well, he didn't have to, he chose to love and trust his
Chose
Father.
to. Yes.
So he understands what it feels like not to know what's going on, but to trust anyway. So that's the thing, is that Jesus has been physically there where we are a lot of the time, and only maybe understanding things looking back. That's the weird thing.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're in
I often wonder what Isaac must have felt as well. When he must have thought there was something odd going on, because he said, "Well, where's the ram?" Put yourself in Isaac's boots for a minute. What was going on there in his head?
Yeah, I know. He's like, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But it's that strange sort of situation that we find ourselves in a lot of the time, and I think we're not used to being. We're told today that we should always be in control as human beings. We should always understand what's happening. Science understands what's happening.
Yeah.
Anyone that says science understands what's happening is not a scientist. Well, it's true.
It's true.
I think, I spent enough time in scientific meetings listening to people say we haven't got a clue what's going on. That's the main point. But I think we're kind of bred to believe that rather than to trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want to be
it's difficult to trust.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's been one of the hardest things in the COVID, is it's revealed the lack of trust that we have in everything.
It's revealed the lack of trust, and it's also revealed that the lack of control. It's something that's out of everybody's control, and we don't like that. We're looking for someone to blame, someone to help us, whatever, but because we can't control this virus.
So do you think people want? Do you think people want Boris Johnson to be God then and sort it all out?
Oh gosh.
And then get cross with him because he's a rubbish God.
Someone's got to be the fool guy, haven't they? Yeah, I guess he's the one at the moment, isn't he? He's the one in the sights. I don't know.
We have no king. We have no king but Caesar. Crucify him.
Caesar.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's the thing with the Abraham story. It's just that walking up the mountain and trusting, and God promising to provide the lamb thousands of years in the future for Abraham's thing.
Yeah.
Is that promise of Jesus is there at the beginning, right at the beginning of Judaism and Christianity, right there.
Yeah.
The last thing we're going to talk about today is O Come, Emmanuel. I quite like that hymn, or
Yes.
Advent Carol. Do you want to tell us what's behind O Come, Emmanuel? Joanne?
It's the Advent thing about waiting, is it? We're calling for Jesus to come, and it's in a way it traces the history of Israel. So the first verse, come and rescue the captive Israel, goes through the tribes of Sinai's height. The branch of Jesse's stem touches on King David, and the next one, key of David, come and open. We talk about the star, which is reminiscent of the star, I think, over Bethlehem. Which shows us the way to Jesus. Musically, it's a lovely hymn. I love this hymn. It's unusual because it's still a sort of different, it's not in a regular rhythm, if you like. It's in a minor key. It's one of my favourites. It's got a lot of character. But I think the story of it is great. So we end up, asking we ask God to take all our sad divisions away and to be our King of peace. Oh come, oh come. It's just a wonderful, heartfelt plea, to God, bring Emmanuel now.
It's that it's almost a kind of yearning, isn't it? And I think in December it's that yearning, like we've all got that yearning now for 2020 to be over.
Absolutely.
And, that sort of thing, and for God to come. Is this really interesting that in this sort of secular world everyone's yearning for the light to come at the end of the year? And it's really interesting how that's so deep within us as human beings, that in December it's dark, it's cold, it's miserable, and we yearn for the light to come into our lives and for our lives to improve and for hope to be reborn, which is the Christmas story.
It is, yes.
And what O Come Emmanuel is, it calls Jesus to be with us by the names he was called in the Old Testament, isn't it? So he's called Key of David.
This is a very old name, isn't it?
Yeah. Emmanuel, he's called Key of David, he's come Root of Jesse, all those different names. So it's bringing it all together and pleading really for Jesus to come and bring us hope and light in this dark time of year.
It is. It's bringing the light, isn't it? I mean, Christmas is right in midwinter, isn't it? It's the darkest time of the year, and we're really now looking forward towards the light. So
and I think
dispel the shadows of the night.
And that new beginning, isn't it? It's always that thing where it's always that thing where we're waiting for new hope and new birth and new light to be born. And it goes back in a way to the holly and the ivy, is that the world itself, nature itself, reveals the story of God. Is the story of Jesus is told in the world around us, is that when Jesus is born, the light does come and new birth does happen. So it's almost as if the story of Jesus is in the Bible, but it's also all around us in everything we see. So
that's incredibly symbolic, isn't it? I hadn't thought it that way. Yeah, it is.
It's just written into the fabric of the universe. That's a geeky science thing, that is. Sorry.
It is, isn't it? That's it. Yeah, I don't fully understand that, but I'll take your word for that, geeky science.
Geeky science. But I think, and I think we say them in evening prayer, don't we? In evening prayer, we say each of these names of Jesus from the Old Testament in the last 8 days before Christmas. So we're literally calling Jesus to be with us. With these different names. O come, Emmanuel is December the 23rd, I think. So we're calling him each day to be with us in those different ways. Top nerd fact, if you want to be a proper church nerd, is in between Ascension Day and Pentecost, we use the same names of Jesus to be with us in Pentecost. So as Jesus is born into the world at Christmas, when the Holy Spirit comes at Pentecost, he's born in us.
He's born in us. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So that's,
Yes.
thank you, Father Peter from Murfield, for drumming that into me, singing those for so long, for 3 years. Like, and I used to love that. Just go, oh, the wonder. He used to say, and you're like, oh, nerding out. That's great. So I hope you found this podcast useful, everyone. That's given you a bit more of an insight into the theme of this week, in the first week of Advent, of Jesus coming.
Certainly given me a bit to think about.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And I suppose as you're out and about this week, watch out for those signs of holly and ivy and new life and new birth. And just think about these things this week, about God always being with us as we walk up the mountain, being confused, not knowing what's happening, a bit like Abraham.
Oh, tidings of comfort.